Call the meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Joe is absent tonight. Approval of the agenda. Is there any changes to the agenda? No. Council have any? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda with no changes?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Heidi.
I'll second.
Second by Shallon. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. Approval of the minutes. We have a copy of the September 4th, 2024 regular meeting and the September 11th, 2024 special meeting. Is there any changes or corrections needed in either one of those sets of minutes? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to approve both sets of minutes?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Diane, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Shallon. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. This now brings us to our public open forum. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the council? Is there anyone that would like to speak to the council? Call a third time. Is there anyone that would like to speak to the council? Our public open forum is now closed. We have no public hearings. We'll move on to reports and presentations. Public Works Department, Ben?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This past month, the storm sewer line that was hit from a boring rig that we discussed last month, that has been repaired, so that's good to go again. Gravel cul-de-sacs, we put new class 5 down and grading those in preparation for winter. We currently have 2 of our trucks on min bid for the auction. They're set to close this Friday. Plow trucks are all going through the shop now, receiving their annual maintenance, and DOT inspections will be done in the first part of October. We did have one plow that had to be repaired, so that's completed and ready to go. Doing some sprinkler repairs around the fitness park and JC Park. We poured a new sidewalk at the fish cleaning station from the building down to the parking lot. Put the concrete and multi-unit mailbox up for Author's Edition. Poured a concrete dumpster pad at the campground. We put in 7 new trees along Park Road. Tree inspections took place in August, so we're doing follow-ups now and working with the homeowners that have any questions or need more information on getting those trees down. Several trees had to be taken down from city property. We did some on 2nd Street North and in 2 of our parks. Stumps are ground and everything is cleaned up. We did close down the splash pad for the season. Everything's been blown out and winterized, so that's ready for next year. Arena, we installed all the boards and glass. These are being cleaned prior to the ice going in mid-October. We've got some advertising signs that we received, and those have been installed. So, any questions?
Questions? I know Chief Jensen had talked to you about painting one block or one parking spot to open up that intersection by Birch and.
Yep.
Is that something you plan on doing this year or?
Yeah, we're gonna meet over there and mark off how far back exactly to go so we get the right spots and
Okay.
line of sight opened up. Yep.
Okay. He had requested that because it's pretty tight when cars are parking too close to that intersection. It's really hard to see anybody that wants to cross the street.
Birch and Sinclair Lewis?
Birch and Sinclair Lewis by Holy Family School. So
Okay.
paint that back one more parking spot.
Yep.
On both sides of the street, get that opened up a little bit and then,
We're looking at Ash Street too.
and then
or
Ash Street
Sinclair.
going around the corner,
Yeah, good
Doing-
idea.
painting that, so. Okay, that's the only thing I have. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
City engineer update.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. A few things on the list here, Author's Edition. The only thing there was, if you recall, there was some issues with the hydrants that had plugs in them. Those have been removed and everything's been, is in the process of being restored. So there's a little bit of sidewalk that had to be replaced. And I think there's just a little cleanup and reseeding along one edge. But other than that, everything's been done on that project. So that should be behind us. The truck stop storm sewer project is basically done. We are just getting the final pay app and all of the proper forms and whatnot to close that one out. So that one is, I was down there, and looks like grass is growing pretty well, and things look okay down there. So that one should be done here shortly. 2025 project, not a lot's happened since last week. I can say I was out there. There was some comments about the sidewalk and what kind of shape those are, and I drove that tonight and looked around in some detail, and I don't think there's a lot that's real good out there, but there are a few segments that we might see if we could try and salvage if the project does move forward in the plans and specs, but it's not a great deal of that which is out there. Most of it is in pretty rough shape still, so. Other than that, there's the 8th Street, which I think the intention is to talk about that at the action item time, but that's about all I probably have for that one at the moment. Any questions of me?
You had mentioned working to get the hydrants covered under warranty. Was that successful, or?
Yeah, at this stage, there was a request from the contractor to split some costs and have us pay a third of the costs. And I've told them that that's not something that I'm interested in, so we'll see if they come back with anything, but I don't see any reason that the city should be responsible for that, any percentage of that cost.
Good deal.
Okay. Any other questions? On new industrial parks on that lot that's straight south where the truck wash is
Yes.
of the truck stop?
Mhm.
I seen today they were dumping black dirt all the way around the outside edge, kind of forming that up. Is there a situation where MnDOT's going to start slapping hands because there's no silt fence?
It could be, I wasn't aware that those things are going on down there, but I could take a look on the way out of town and just look what's going on. We could send them a letter to say, it's their responsibility to deal with erosion control. I mean, we can police that a little bit, make sure that if they're not doing something, let them be aware that they need to make sure that is protected from erosion. That's something that they should have a watershed permit as well that would require them to have those things as well.
Yeah. The one that looked like the people that are hauling that pile of dirt away, they're bringing the black dirt from there, and they're using the side dumps, which I don't have a problem how they do it.
Yep.
But they're dumping it at the top edge of the ditch right next to where their parking or their driveway is.
Sure.
And there's no silt fence underneath it, and I can see if we get any moisture at all, it's gonna wash into the bottom of that ditch.
Yeah, we certainly don't want that. Hopefully, if we get out of here, we'll still light. I'll run down there and take a look.
Okay, and I didn't know if you knew about it or not,
Yeah,
but
I was not aware of that. No.
I wanted to bring that up, so.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
6C Airport Board.
So the airport board met today in a rescheduled meeting at 1 o'clock. We did also receive the Public Works report as it relates to the airport itself. They are having ongoing discussions on the land acquisition project that we've been working on. There have been conversations between the parties, another meeting tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So we're hoping to get this moving forward and to get it resolved. We did receive information that neither the FAA or the MnDOT Aeronautics will participate in funding to relocate the AWAS, which is the Automated Weather Observation System. That is located out on the airport, and the new FAA guidelines state that you can't do any construction within 500 feet of the AWAS, which most of our airport is within, so we need to relocate it. We are looking or requesting specs for the foundation for the AWAS to see if we can proceed absent any grant funding for that. So we would have to absorb the cost of relocating that so that we can request grant funding for future projects. And also they looked at a capital improvement plan. We have 3 main projects going forward. One would be to relocate that AWAS. The other one would be to finalize the land purchase. And the third is to construct the 80 by 80 box hangar. So this would be a bigger hangar like for Central Plains type of a hangar to operate out of. The benefit of moving forward with that now is that we have the opportunity for 97.5% of funding from the other governmental agencies. So, I mean, it would behoove us to move forward at 2.5% of the project cost if we're able to be successful with that. So that's the 3 things that the airport is looking at. We don't have any action items for you tonight.
Questions, concerns? Okay, and we will move on to action items. 7A, approve resolution 2024-76, ordering improvement of 2025 project.
So this is related to the project where you had the hearing last week, and I did get the minutes out to you so you could review the comments that were made by the public at that meeting. The next steps for the project would be number one, order the improvement. I do have that resolution in your packet for action tonight. Then there would be periodic design approvals and recommendations, because ordering the improvement will tell the city engineer to go out and finalize designs. So there would be periodic approvals and recommendations. Following that, probably in January, we would approve the design and advertise for bids, open the bids following that, then review and accept bids. Then we enter into contracts, and then the project ensues. Then during the project, then we have the bonding period, the public hearing on assessments, and then the certification of those assessments. So, and then project finalization. So that's 11 steps yet to take to finalize this project. But the next one is the resolution ordering the improvement. And then also I have one additional thing that I put on there because it's probably going to be the item that may take the most discussion, and that has to do with 8th Street. That was the item on September 11th that seemed to garner the most conversation. I did put several options for the design of 8th Street South on there, everywhere from a full-width street with sidewalks on both sides to reconstruct in the current configuration and anywhere in between. I did provide you tonight a copy of those same options, but the city engineer put footage on there. So like the full-width street sidewalks on both sides, we need 47 feet. You know, for a full width with sidewalk on one side, we need 42 feet. To reduce the street width and have parking on one side, but still have sidewalks 43 foot. To reduce the width, the parking to one side, so we only have parking on one side and a sidewalk on one side, we can go down to 38 feet. If we have a one-way street with sidewalks, it's 27 feet. To reduce the one-way street with parking and sidewalk on only one side, it's 26 feet. There was also questions about terminating Main Street and installing a cul-de-sac, and I think there's still road right-of-way issues with that, and it may not be able to be done. And then reconstructing the current configuration with no sidewalks. You know, we have 25 feet pine to birch, 28 birch to ash, and 35 to Main, so we have all kinds of different sizes in there. And then there was straight in the intersection onto Main Street by the trail was a request, but we really can't do that because of the structural abutment of the bridge. So I think that there's a few here that you could consider. If we do the full width street with sidewalks on both sides, down to one side, or the one-way, or the one, so they have several options that you can look at, that you could have some discussion at this time. Maybe ask the city engineer what he thinks his recommendation might be given the configuration. It's not just the width, it's the way the houses are situated and how close they are to the roadway and their driveways, and all of those things factor into it. I did put the option on there that we could actually have a meeting where this is all we talk about, and we could actually reconvene out on site. We could walk the street. You know, that's an option that you could do. We'd want to do that sooner rather than later, and that's why I brought this up tonight, because of the weather situation. So there's each that too, or you could go out there individually. I don't know how you want to proceed with that. I just wanted to start that 8th Street conversation earlier rather than later. And it's not going to impede your ability to order the improvement tonight. It's just to start this conversation on 8th Street.
Questions?
Looks like Keith has something
For
to.
Keith, go ahead.
Just one clarification, that is on the widths that were provided. Those are kind of minimum, meaning it's kind of edge improvement to edge of improvement, meaning if there's sidewalk, it would be edge walk to edge walk minimum, suggesting the sidewalk would be basically right behind the curb. If we want to have any boulevard, it would be wider than that. So, you know, if there's a sidewalk one side, it's back a curb one side, the back a walk the other side. So those are minimum amounts with everything scrunched together essentially.
Okay. Council have any questions? Basically, looking at the configuration with no sidewalks, right now, we got 25-foot wide street from Pine to Birch. And even if we did reduce it to a one-way street with sidewalk on both sides, we need 27. Where's that extra, you know, is it doable to do 20 and a 25 foot, or we're gonna be buying property, or,
Well-
because I know the property lines are right behind the curb.
Basically from Birch to kind of where it angles as you head west towards Maine, there's 33 feet of right-of-way in there. It gets wider after the angle because we got more right-of-way there, and when we go east of Birch, there is, I think it's an odd number, it's like 53 feet or something of right-of-way east of Birch, but there's only 33 feet. Unfortunately, the subdivision that is where the pond is at, south of 8th Street, for whatever reason, it was 1895, a long, long time ago, 100 and whatever, 30 years ago, they did not provide right-of-way on that plat. So we don't have it. So if we need to go more, we would end up having to buy right-of-way, buy permanent easement, that kind of thing through there in order to do that. So we have 33 feet at this point. So without buying right-of-way, we'd have whatever fits in 33 feet is all we could do through there.
Would the discussion be for sidewalk from Main Street all the way up to the next connecting sidewalk? I think that's on the block between Birch and Ash.
Sorry, say it one more time.
Would you be considering the full length from Main Street for sidewalk all the way up 8th Street till the sidewalk starts again on, I believe it's?
Yes, I mean, I would like to see us at least consider sidewalk on one side, so that we have that pedestrian throughfare going through there. That would be ideal situation. If we just feel we can't do that, obviously that's a decision you could make, but from my perspective, trying to get not only vehicle traffic, but also pedestrian traffic, a sidewalk, at least on one side, would be certainly what would be desirable through there. But it's realizing we've got challenges, no question, going through that area. So, but there's doables. Some of these, I have to look at if we have an urban section. It's a little more difficult. Even if it's a one-way, we have to make sure that we have the ability, if there's a stalled car, that someone can get around them. So essentially, it still kind of becomes a narrow two-way, if you will, because you got to have it wide enough so that one car can be against the curb, another car can get around them. So we have to think about those kinds of things. When it's two-way if it's two-way in one parking lane, then it's sort of a little more like Ash in a way, where we've got two full driving lanes. I looked at 11-foot driving lanes, which is kind of about as minimum as we would like to do. That's kind of what we have with 11-foot. When it's against a curb, yet there's 2 feet extra that you have to do. So essentially against a curb, it'd be 13 feet, and then 11 feet, and then a parking lane that would be against the other curb. So think about those kind of parameters as we think about. I've looked at 5-foot sidewalks through there. So that's the widths that I have include 5-foot sidewalks on one side or the other. We can have sidewalk right against the curb. We have it other places in town. It's not as ideal from a snow removal perspective. Ben can probably tell you there's some challenges with that, but it is doable to go that route.
The only problem I see, Keith, is if you have the sidewalk right up against the curb, then when they plow the streets, they're plowing the snow right back onto the guy's sidewalk, and then what's he going to do with it?
Yep, I mean, that's part of the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
That, no question, that's why I mentioned, that's part of a maintenance issue, whether the city comes back and does a little cleanup to push that back a little bit, otherwise, because a lot of times, especially those wet snows, once you get a little bit of heat and it gets moved, all of a sudden freezes, and then it
Yeah.
becomes a bit of a challenge that direction. So we did talk about having meetings with folks. I mean, one of the things that we could do is if there's certain options that you really don't want to consider, then we can kind of push them off the table, or at least table them for now. And as we move forward, we could actually then start developing layouts for some of the alternatives, so that when we have a public discussion, we can show those and talk about those and what those might look like. But it might be good if there's something that, the council's just not going to get behind and couldn't support 1, 2, 3 of these options, maybe we can scratch those off.
Okay.
Thank you.
I personally would like to go look at each of these options and visualize what it could look like. I don't think that would hinder us making, ordering the improvements tonight, but what would be the goal to have this portion of it figured out?
Well, we don't need, we mostly more from a weather perspective. We'd want to get you out there when it's still decent before the snow starts to fly. So as long as we could do it sometime in the next, few weeks, that would be fine. It's not going to hinder things moving forward if the council moves forward, authorizing plans and specs. It's not going to hinder anything moving forward. There's plenty of other things to be done. But we would want to get going on this so that we could figure that out. But and we could even, I would suggest it'd be nice if we could do some layouts of some things that we could look at. We can then kind of visualize them out there in the field where they're at. So if you actually did give us several weeks to kind of get that part started, it would be easy. I might even be able to go out there with the survey crew and sort of mark some stakes of kind of where this could be.
Yeah.
So you could actually see it.
I would personally like that, but
Yeah.
I can see your point, but I think there's some of these that aren't even,
yeah, I've already got a couple marked not.
yeah, because we wouldn't be, number 9 wouldn't be on the table, I wouldn't think, because that's not feasible with Main Street. To reconstruct the current configuration with no sidewalks, to me, that's not an option. I think we need a sidewalk at least on one side. The cul-de-sac has got some value to it. The only thing is you'll never get the cul-de-sac big enough to turn anything around down at the bottom, especially a snowplow. So we wouldn't have room. We'd be having to buy more property, and then that runs you into up against what the underpass is.
Yeah.
So I don't think that would be anything we'd be able to really look at.
And the one-way street, I think that the flow of traffic already is heavy enough in certain times of day, and for that neighborhood specifically, it would be a super hard adjustment. Not to say change isn't possible, but I think we'd run into some issues, people going wrong way for a while.
Yeah.
To me, my favorite of the whole thing is the one-way going eastbound.
Going east?
Going east with the sidewalk on the north side. And then parking on one side.
See, and that's where I want to go out there again, because I haven't been in the neighborhood for a few months to know what is the current parking situation, what houses are currently utilizing their parking on that street when parking's allowed, and what would it look like to have a curb in addition to sidewalk on that side of the street. Where tree wallers have their houses, there's not much wiggle room there at all. And if that's going to be the side of the street, which would make the most sense because it would connect to the neighborhood of kids walking and most of the walking traffic, pedestrian traffic, but
The one thing is if it's one way, we can narrow the street down, get the sidewalk in and still stay. The way I picture it is stay away from that house. Or some of them houses and their driveways actually, if they have a vehicles parked in it, it's not gonna be blocking that sidewalk near as bad. Because we're narrowing that street by doing the one way.
so you'd then
At this
propose
point
to
in time-
narrow it from the north.
Excuse me. At this point in time, I think only those options, if you all, like consensus, say, not this, not this, not this, but if one or two of you is interested in exploring the option, I don't see any reason that we need to eliminate those at this point. Those could be eliminated later on. We could explore those a little bit
Right.
further. So I don't think you need to be thinking about sort of final things, but, if there's a desire to see something, we might as well explore it just a little bit more and go to the next step. But if there's maybe those bottom three, if there's no way we're gonna support any of that, then let's just cross those off and move on.
Yeah.
Okay. Comments?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I am with you, especially on those bottom couple. I don't think that those make the most sense, but I also, when you start to get up to the high footage, there's a lot of those driveways that would cut those back quite a bit. So I don't.
Right.
So if we say, let's look at 1 through 6, what makes the most sense, and go from there.
Agreed. I think that makes a lot of sense.
We can do that as a group, group them and have that option in front of us, what it's gonna look like. I don't,
Engineering wise,
the
would it
engineering
take a
wise,
little
they're
more?
gonna be out there surveying a lot, and that's just gonna raise the bill. But,
I don't see that being a rule. It's a fee-based thing, we'll just do it. I mean, it's not, as long as we don't go
right,
lots of meetings and continue on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right,
We'll be fine. So-
okay. So general consensus, we just kind of see the design of 1 through 6,
I think so.
go through that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the other part is we still need a motion to approve the resolution 2024-76 ordering the improvement.
I will make that motion to order the improvement.
Okay, we have a motion by Heidi. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Shallon. Any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 4 in favor, none against. 7B, approve appointment winter seasonal employees.
Okay, that's the time of the year where we appoint the winter seasonal employees. We're looking at Clint Althouse for the arena. Dwayne Waletzko, he kind of works mostly the arena, but he'll help plow snow if we need him to haul snow, so that would be arena or streets and parks. Sarah Linnow, she's the figure skating instructor, and Dennis Christensen as the outdoor rink. So these are all 4 returning longtime employees that we've been able to continue to bring them back. And so we're looking to approve the appointment of the winter seasonal employees.
Questions? Concerns? Do I have a motion to approve the appointments?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Diane. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 4 in favor, none against. Unfinished business, 8A, 2025 Building Improvement Project Update.
Just a couple items on the building project update. Ben has been working on to finalize the specifications for the updates or the proposal. A couple things we came up about is the insulation does not meet the commercial code on the flat roof portions of the buildings, both City Hall and the arena, so there'll be another inch of added insulation that's going to have to be included in this project. Another one is natural gas can be brought into City Hall. The cost of bringing it in is about $700. And so this will give us the opportunity to bid a natural gas unit or an electric unit. So the natural gas unit would save in utility costs, so we'd like to include that option as an option for bid. And then also the EFIS, which is the exterior insulation and finish, or it's not really stucco, it's EFIS, but on the south side of City Hall, it's, if you see above the fire hall there, it's kind of peeling away, and so we want to address that. Not probably part of this project, but something you should be thinking about as we look at the building maintenance, and that is starting to show a little bit more, and we probably should address that sooner rather than later. This is just information only. We'll be coming back at one of the future meetings to actually approve the specifications so that we can get this out to bid.
Okay, any questions on those?
Any idea how much the insulation will affect the bottom line or no of the total project? Like,
We had a square foot.
Yeah, it's about $1 a square foot, so, we figured about 10,000 on this building, and then it'd probably be 25,000 on the arena.
thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
any other questions? That was for information only. We will move on to 8B, easement request over wastewater treatment plant property.
So the policy committee, they were tasked with addressing the request for an easement over the wastewater treatment plant property. The committee met with the property owner for clarification of exactly what he was asking for. The owner wishes to utilize the property for recreational use, mainly for four-wheeling for his children and also for access to the billboard. He also offered to sell the property to the city for the tax value, which is currently about $43,000. We reached out to the county to determine if that value includes the billboard, because the owner wishes to retain the billboard rights. And also, we're going to ask the public utility to weigh in on being a potential purchaser of that property. So we're going to be setting another meeting with the owner after we hear a response from the county and we have talk with the public utility. So we continue to move forward on that request for the easement. There's some thought that, you know, if the city controlled that land, then we don't have to worry about people crossing the wastewater treatment plant property in the future. There's also, if we ever expand, will we even expand that way to the south? So that's kind of the conversation the public utility will have to have. And we'll come back with more information at another meeting.
Questions, concerns?
I guess the only comment I would add is that what he had said at the conversation we had was that realistically, he's just trying to clean up some property that they own, and he couldn't do the purchase without having some sort of access to the property. So he was open to any option. So it seems like we could potentially get something figured out one way or another, so.
And it's one thing is next to our wastewater treatment plant, so we've got some issues with security and stuff like that, you know. So we have to have some type of control on who's crossing city property and going past that plant.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why we're still in discussions, so. New business, rental license notices.
We have a couple items. The city's in the second year of the residential rental licensing program. However, there's still a few rental properties that have not finalized their 2023 licenses or their initial licenses. They've either not applied, refused to apply, or slow in making necessary improvements. We've declared some units not fit for human habitation. That's actually given us good results. The one we were working with a landlord, and the property was in disrepair, and he was actually pro us placarding the building, so then now he is now in the process of making that. Another one, when we placarded it, it got very good results. They were in within the week doing all the necessary repairs. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes we're actually helping the landlord by doing that. So anyway, because of those units we've had for not fit for human habitation, the remaining units are being turned over to the city attorney. That's either for an administrative warrant for access to inspect the unit or for an order to vacate the unit by the tenant. So that those final three landlords is kind of in that area where we're trying to get an administrative warrant to conduct the inspection. And so then there's one final one that's in the process that the landlord has to come back in front of the city council to get their license issued. So there's a couple different aspects of the code that we have utilized. So we're down to like our final three landlords. And then in 2024, people have already been renewing. So that process has been working real good. And we have been doing the every other year inspection. So we're trying to get everybody on the odd year inspections. So the ones that we did have to do in 2024 that were for 2023, we'll probably have to likely do it again in 2025 to get in that rotation. That's kind of what our plan is. So we will get an annual report from the inspector at a future meeting, and that'll be more like how many that have been licensed, and also we'll probably likely get some information on what's the most common type of thing that he's found in his inspections, and just kind of get a good handle on it now that we've been through a whole cycle, and actually had a lot more positives than negatives that I've heard. So it was kind of surprising to me, but that's kind of where we're at right now.
Okay, questions on that?
In some of these, when it mentions like a landlord or whatever, is it multiple properties or is it just one unit that is being
We
referenced?
have one of the three. One has multiple properties, and then two of them just have single units.
Okay.
So.
So when we go to the city attorney for the administrative warrant or an order to vacate the unit by the tenants, how much time now that you've given us this report?
It depends on,
are we
it
gonna-
depends on the judge, really. I mean, because he has to file with the court, and then the judge has to review it and make a decision on granting it. So the city attorney could send it to the court, and then it'll get slotted in front of probably an administrative, it's called administrative hearing with the judge, and they'll review it and either approve it or deny it or give a time frame. So we're kind of at the mercy of the court system for that, once he gets it filed with the court. I talked to him the other day about how long it's going to take to get these warrants processed, and he said that it's pretty much a boilerplate process, so it shouldn't take him too long to get that done.
Okay. All right, any other questions on that?
I guess the only other thing I'd follow up with is in the one that has multiple units or multiple rental, like have they let us into other rental or just
We have been, yeah, one of the buildings we have been in and gone through and working that one through. And the other ones, it's not, it's kind of like you keep saying, well, I'm not ready yet, or I haven't got everything done yet. So it's like, we don't want to waste anybody's time by going in there just for multiple trips when we know it's not ready.
Right.
I just didn't know if it affected their rental license overall in the city or just on one unit, or how that worked.
So if you get an apartment building that has multiple units, we inspect every individual unit.
Right, okay. Oh, it's an apartment building. I didn't
So
know
it's a
if,
building.
I didn't know if somebody had like several properties or something
He has a
around.
couple different properties, and each property has multiple units on it.
Okay, and we haven't been into any of the
We've
properties.
been into some of them, but we haven't issued any licenses for any of them.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
The main thing is we gotta bring it to a head eventually,
Right,
because these people, these three have been doing this for 2 years now and haven't had to do anything, and they don't have a license, but they're still collecting rent.
Right.
And I know it's not good to say, but it really looks bad on us as
Yeah,
a
it does.
council because we're not pushing this issue. That's the reason why I asked the question, much longer are we gonna wait before we just drop the hammer and be done with it?
Yep.
With that, winter parking regulations,
Just remind you that the winter parking regulations will be here beginning December 1st, and that was the December 1st to March 31st, no parking on the city streets. That's the current ordinance that's in effect. But we do have one request, First Street South along the old mill, that block right there. The owner has requested if the city would consider exempting them from that, and then they would maintain it. So I said I would address it to the city council if you want to send it to committee, or if you want to council address it as a whole. I just wanted to bring it up before winter gets here. So I don't know if you want to send that to a committee, if you want to have a discussion at this point in time, if we want to bring the landowner in and have the discussion with him, or how you want to proceed with that.
I think it could go along with C, where the policy committee kind of discusses both at the same time, but my initial knee-jerk is that this kind of opens a can of worms, so we have to
I
be a
agree.
little treacherous
I was
with
going to say the
how
same
we
thing.
approach that one.
Yeah.
So you're saying the policy committee?
That's my opinion, but
policy or
I'll leave for,
operations, or,
I don't know.
because operations basically would cover, the snow removal and stuff like that, how the city operates, but we've got the policy in place.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that would affect anything within the ordinance, if we'd,
Right.
I don't know.
And I don't
mean-
want to get into that
Right.
good old boy system
Yeah.
where it's, well, he
Cities
knows
that I
this
can-
guy,
yeah.
so he got to do this.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
I don't want to get into that either.
Operations makes sense if that's the,
The policy's in place already.
yeah.
Okay.
And that also is one of our troublemakers on rentals, so I don't know if I really want to work too much with them.
Okay.
I think my gut reaction was kind of where Heidi's was initially as well, is that opens up a can of worms. As much as I wasn't in favor of the winter street parking regulations, I don't think letting one apartment do the cleaning, or I don't know. Are there any other options for them for parking over there, or?
Our problem that we've had with that is then the public utility allows them to park down by one of their buildings, down the block, like a block down. And then it gets all tore up, and it's always a mud mire in the spring. And the tenants are like walking at night down the block, and it kind of became that kind of an issue. It was either safety of their tenants, I guess. I call them employees, I think, but the safety of their tenants that they were concerned about. And so he said he would take on the responsibility of clearing it if we would allow that. That's up to you. You might want to look at that, and you might want to see if there's other areas in the city that are comparable that could open a can of worms.
Right.
So,
That's what I'm afraid of. I think it would open a can of worms. I wouldn't want to do that.
Okay, so request general consensus goes to operations.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine.
Okay. Nuisance violation abatement procedures.
So I've had several of you and other people asking what are our procedures when it comes to abating nuisance violations. And so that's another suggestion that I have, maybe you want to review the policy that we have. You might want to review the city code that we have in place and make some recommendations if you think it's time for a change. Or the other option is to send it to the Planning Commission for review because it kind of falls under them. Not every piece of it does, but most of it does fall under them. So you could look at that, or you could send it back to your committee too, to say we want to review the procedures and make sure we have the most up-to-date policy in effect.
Personally, I would like to see it come to the policy committee just to look at a couple things. Just even seeing some of the places where people are still having issues around the city, and knowing that, I mean, maybe I could have done a little bit more asking certain questions along the way as well. I feel like that's maybe one piece where I've personally misstepped in the process, is not pushing harder asking on some of those things. So I would like to have the opportunity to work on the policy committee and just look at it and maybe make some suggestions before too long, because I mean a lot of people who shouldn't have waited as long as they have are waiting. So I think we should do something sooner rather than later. That's my 2 cents.
Okay. Any other?
Policy, I think policy should look at it.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, you're okay with that? Yeah, the main thing is, everybody knows nuisances, but it's not actually just properties that are being the nuisance.
Sure.
We're getting it spilling out into the streets. We got, there for a while, we had a pickup with all 4 flat tires. We got other stuff parked in the street, parked on boulevards, everything plugged in, blocking sidewalks, everything else. What's the definition of nuisance?
Yeah.
And how far are we gonna let this go?
Yeah.
City code says no parking on a street more than 48 hours in one period without being moved. Obviously, when you start setting orange cones by your mess out into the street, you haven't moved it in 48 hours. So I definitely agree with going with the policy, and if we need to, we're gonna
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
putting the police department and planning on this with a little more teeth.
Yep.
So,
And I think one of the decisions that you need to consider or talk about is, that we've always been under the direction by the council, the policy is we are complaint-based for
Right.
nuisances. If you want us to become more actively proactive out seeking out nuisance violations, that's different than responding to nuisance complaints. So that's a policy of the city council that you need to determine of how you want us to apply the code. So something else that you should talk about.
A question I would also have is, I think our city attorney, he's not combing through our policies and looking at pieces, but, it might be a benefit to at least see if Nick has suggestions on components that he knows works, or maybe within the firm there are other cities that they know that say, hey, this works really well, here's a suggestion that might apply well to.
And we have, the city attorney does have our nuisance code, and he's actually drafted the letter that we do send out, and then we fill in the areas that need to be addressed. We'll look at it, these are the pieces of the code that you're in violation of, and this is what you need to correct it. So that part of it, that we can do. It's that once you send that letter to gain that compliance, that's the issue. We can't go out there and make them do it. We can't go out there and we can't go on their property and clean up. We can't do some of those things, and that is gaining that compliance once they receive the letter. That's where we run into issues. And so that's something that if someone has a magic wand that can make people do that, I think that's probably where we have the most issues. So.
it kind of falls in line with what I've been asking for
Yeah.
a couple of years, a code enforcement officer just to go around and walk up to the front door, hand them their ticket and say, you got 30 days. Otherwise, I'll be back and it's gonna be more, but it does, I guess it doesn't work that way, is what I've been told. So that would be going to the policy committee.
Yes.
Okay. That brings us to our consent agenda. We have schedule of claims, unpaid claims of $29,958.50. Paid claims was 0, so the total would be the same as previous. August checks, paid claims / payroll of $1,407,962.28. Is there any questions about the consent calendar as presented? Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Diane, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Heidi. Call the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 4 in favor, none against. Informational items.
Just a couple items. Remember, the general election is November 5th. We approved the ballots, I think, last week. The absentee ballot applications are currently being accepted. We'll start mailing ballots out on September 20th. In-person early voting starts here at City Hall on October 29th. That's 1 week prior to the election. It includes Saturday, November 2nd, so you can early vote any of those days here at City Hall. And then, of course, Election Day is November 5th. And then the other item I have is the Spectrum channel lineup changes is included for your review.
Any questions on those informational items? That brings us to the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Shellen.
I'll second.
Second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. Meeting adjourned.